kayaking trip, here are some PA laws to ensure that you won't get in trouble. Kayaking is a great way to explore the beauty of Pennsylvania while enjoying the exercise and peacefulness of an unpowered watercraft. The PA Fishing Commission, or PFBC, states the following regulations for kayaks. Every person in a kayak must have a personal flotation device, or PFD, while on board. Children under 12 are required to wear their PFDs at all times. From November 1st to April 30th, anyone in a kayak must wear a PFD. Any kayak in the water before dawn or after dusk is required to have a handheld light to signal other boaters in order to avoid collision. All non-powered watercraft must have a whistle or other sound-producing device, and alcohol is prohibited in all PA state parks or on PFBC property while operating a kayak or canoe.
Why you would go kayaking, and the first reason is because it's a great exercise. You kind of use your full body. It's a lot of core and definitely a lot of arm strength, and I mean it's obviously easier if there's two people, but if there's one, you kind of control most of it, so it's a good workout. And then you can also go kayaking in any body of water. You can go something like Edinburgh Lake, or maybe in your backyard, or even something bigger like a bay. We're going to start off by showing you guys the different parts of a kayak. This is a recreation kayak, and so this is the bow, very front. This is the bow, the flat front part. This is the hull, the part where you sit, and then
stern.
This is the stern, the back part.
Okay, before you go on a kayaking trip, you want to make sure that you have a paddle, a personal flotation device, and it's also suggested to have a blige pump. So there's a couple different types of kayaks, and we mentioned that this is a touring kayak, but there's also a sit-on-top kayak, a touring kayak, recreational kayaks, inflatable kayaks. There's also one for children as well, which is a little bit smaller size.
So to get in from the shore, you just simply step in, carefully, sit down, and get pushed in. You're all the way.
Okay, now to get out of the kayak, you're going to grab the handle, pull the kayak out, and carefully step out.
To get into the kayak from the dock, you want to first start by placing the kayak parallel to the dock. Then you want to place the paddle in the kayak with one foot on the kayak to keep it stable. Next, you want to sit down on the ledge of the dock, place your feet in the kayak. Then you want to slowly hoist yourself into the kayak, then sit in the seat. And you're all set to go. So there are three types of paddling strokes. The first one is the forward stroke. You want to submerge one end of the paddle in the water near your toes. Next, propel the kayak forward by pulling the blade back towards your hip. While pulling the paddle blade out of the water, rotate your body forward while dripping the opposite blade into the water. Next is a reverse stroke. You want to submerge one end of the paddle in the water between your body and the stern, which is the back of the kayak. Look behind you and propel the paddle forward towards your toes. Last, you want to allow your body to rotate back into the square sitting position and repeat the process on the opposite side. The last stroke we're going to talk about is a sweep stroke. You place the end of the paddle in the water by your toes against the bow or front of the kayak. Then you draw back the paddle in a half moon arc toward the stern of the kayak. And last, you rotate your torso with the paddle. This stroke is to turn forward. To exit the kayak on a dock, you want to first have the paddle one side in the kayak and one side out of it. Next, you want to also make sure that the kayak is parallel to the dock. Next, you want to move all your weight towards the dock with your arms. and push yourself out. Sit on the dock and rotate your feet onto the dock where you're safely on. So just for safety tips, those are some things that you always want to make sure that you have when you're out kayaking. So first you want to make sure that you have a safety vest and a paddle. And you never want to paddle alone. Make sure you always have a friend with you just in case anything happens. You don't want to be alone. Next, you always want to wear a helmet or have a flotation device, which we have here, Coast Guard regulated. The next thing is you want to always kayak sober. I mean, it's kind of obvious. You don't want to tip over or have any freak accidents happen. You also want to be honest about your kayaking abilities. You never want to go in waters that might be too strong, or if the weather's bad, just always stay safe. Kayak sober or get pulled over.
Plan your first kayaking trip. You want to choose a small pond or lake because you're not experienced to be out on a real lake. On your first kayaking trip, you want to either dock and boat from your land, which is either a dock here or the beach, so that you're close to somewhere where someone can save you if you do happen to tip over or somebody sees something happening. Lastly, for your first kayak trip, you want to plan a trip that's going to be short and sweet and something that's going to be easy for you to do on your first time in a sunny day, some nice day outside.
If there is a situation where there's a huge gust of wind, you want to stay calm and composed. It's just like driving a car. You don't want to swerve off the road or do anything erratic, so just stay calm and composed.
About how to kayak and the laws and regulations of kayaking, I think we need to tell you about storage and where you put your kayaks and how you take them out of storage and everything like that. So pre-storage care, you need to make sure that your kayak is really clean before you put it away. Clean it with some light dirt, like light soap to get rid of the dirt and stuff. You want to make sure that you clean the inside and outside and make sure that it's dry before you put away. Rats, if you didn't know, like to hide in kayaks, and I found that out one time on the river when I was kayaking and a rat came out of it. I jumped out of the kayak. You also want to make sure that you have the water out because if it freezes in there, which we live in Erie, the freezing water could damage your kayak. You also want to make sure that you use a sun protective spray on hardshell kayaks to help them from the sun and the UV damage light. I didn't do that with mine because I wasn't aware of it, and you could see in the video that my light blue used to be a dark blue, but now I know to take care of that. You also need to make sure that you take care of your accessories, so the paddles and your life vest, all of that needs to be taken and put away in a dry area so that when you bring it out next year, it's not damaged. Some good places to store your kayak indoor would be a garage, or a shed. It keeps it out of the sunlight, it keeps it out of getting water in it, and it's also a good way to keep your kayak out of excessive heat. But outdoors, you want to store your kayak in a shady area, and you want to put it in a shady area where you can cover it with a tarp almost to keep the water out of it. You also want to kind of keep your kayak hidden and position it so that it's difficult to move and have some security cables put to it. People like to steal kayaks, especially if you're on a river, on a creek. I live on a creek, so all of our kayaks are tied down and even bolted to the ground with a lock to make sure everything's closed up. So when you take your kayak out of storage, how I told you to put it away properly, you need to do some inspection of your kayak. You need to look over the hull for some damage. Even though you put it away properly, something could have happened, or you might not have seen something before you put it away. So you want to make sure that you check it and make sure that there aren't any soft spots on it or holes, because when you get in the water, that's not going to be very fun. So you need to inspect the rigging, which means that there's bungees on it and your seating and the plastic eyes, or if your kayak is not a solid plastic, there's two pieces put together. You need to make sure that the two pieces are still properly put together and making sure that all the bolts are still there. That's how you keep the water out. If you do find anything wrong with it, you need to replace those old parts and accessories with some new ones. And an important part is to repair your emergency kit and refill it. at the beginning of the year. You probably take it out at the end of the year. You don't want to store it in the kayak, but you have to have a sound device in your kayak, as a whistle or an air horn or something like that. So you need to make sure that's there. During the season, it's probably a good idea to use a kayak cart to put your kayak in and out of the water, protect it from some damage. In our video, you could see that we just pushed it in and out, but if you don't push it in and out the right way, you're probably going to scratch the bottom and even cause some holes in the bottom of your kayak. You want to make sure that you keep it clean during the season, keep it shaded, and cover the cockpit, because that's how you keep the rain out of it, keep the animals out of it, and you also want to make sure that you keep the mold out of it and scum and stuff from accumulating inside of it. Thank you for watching our video about kayaking. I hope you guys learned a little bit in the proper techniques of how to care for, get in and out, how to properly paddle, and how to properly register and make sure that you're doing everything correct with your kayak. I hope you learned something, and thank you for watching.